Oh, that's cool.
Matt, what's going on?
I got a little slider. Oh shit, sorry. I'm just messing with the slider. Look, ooh. Anyway, so what are we talking about today, Paul?
Well,
Give me some wisdom.
yeah,
Give me some
man.
wisdom.
I don't have a lot of wisdom
Preach,
to provide you. Actually, I
preach, brother, preach.
I interviewed this guy on Boss Academy Radio today. His name is Russ Ruffino. This guy, man,
Mm-hmm.
he's got it dialed in. He's doing some really cool things. You know how everybody does like the low dollar entry level marketing product? He's
Mm-hmm.
selling high level marketing products. He doesn't do a low level one, like $10,000 for an 8-week program. And he's driving a ton of traffic through ads through Facebook and some other channels, puts people in a webinar, does not hard sell them on the webinar, but he says that people are just buying into this idea. He's got, what is it? I think he told me today, right now he's at $250,000 a month consistently. $250,000 a month consistently. He's trying
All
to
right.
get to
So
$1
what?
million a month, but he's teaching other people to do this through his program. And man, it's the kind of stuff that I think we should be exploring because, the whole idea of like the $27 product, the $7 report, that's all great stuff, but you're dealing with a lot of volume of people and you can't
Mm-hmm.
serve them the way you can with like a high level product where you have a smaller number of people, but you're serving them the way that you think you should serve them and you're giving them best customer service. So it's kind of exactly what you're talking about doing through your program.
Well, here's the thing, though. I think there's a difference between a product and a service, right? A product you
Yeah.
could have entry level products. You could have it at $27 if you're not involved in delivering the product, right? Then you could sell it at 27 to a million people and you wouldn't care because it's a product, right? It's downloadable or
Yeah.
hard copy, whatever. But I think in his situation, what you were basically talking about was the fact that he's going to be participating in this training. And that's a whole different ball of wax because you've got a certain amount of time per month that you can devote and you don't want to work with people who are not going to be a good fit and so on and so forth. So you almost have to make that price higher and you almost have to make sure that you take in only individuals that you're going to be able to work with. So, I think there's a huge distinction between product and service. So I think he's definitely doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Picking and choosing.
I think that's a valid point. And I asked him, I said, so are you building a list from these people that opt in and don't buy and marketing to them? And he said, you know what? Because we're not doing as good a job of that as we could. But my thought process is on that is maybe what he's doing is a little bit disruptive because people expect it and they're not buying into his program. He doesn't want to serve those people anyway because they're not interested. He doesn't want to have to convince people to buy into his system. So I think there's some interesting perspective there. And
I think
maybe
so.
that's a really, because I know with your perception management stuff, you're kind of focusing on a smaller audience of captive buyers.
Correct. But I think that in his situation, obviously, there are so many different variables to someone making a purchase. The time could be wrong. They could have a lot of things going on, but they could still be interested. I think to not follow up completely at all, to me, would be, depending on the demographic, but most of the time that would be something that I would not advise anyone to do. Just because I think that, in his situation, it's probably not unlike others where, 80% of that money that, that future income is probably in those individuals that are on the list. But if he's not tagging them again and going back to them and structuring something that's based on their behavior, right, then he might be losing out. Because then he's always
smart as your hair is short, man. That's one thing.
I know. You like that, huh? I cut it yesterday just for you so I would look all sexy.
Yeah. I shaved my head and my wife told me I look like a cancer patient. So unfortunately that wasn't such a good thing.
No, I didn't see it, so I can't comment, but I don't think that would be true.
I think I can make this look sexy. What do you think?
I think you should shave it again and grow out the beard, but not the full beard, because then that's not cool either. But have a
big
goatee.
Mutton chops and a shaved head. That's the look.
No, mutton chops. It's over. It's played out. Shave the head, goatee. That's it. And just that's it. And just get some really, really. What's that style of clothing called where it's very kind of I can't think of it. Oh, help me out here, Paul.
Are you
It's
trying to turn me into a beatnik? I mean, what are you trying to do
no, no,
here?
no, no. It's like it's a very mechanical type of look, and I forget what the hell it's called. In terms of glasses and watches and all that other shit. Um, whatever,
Yeah, no
whatever. It
worries.
doesn't matter.
Yeah, but anyway, I like what Russ is doing with his model. I think it's definitely. I think you're right. I mean, I think you need to still build that list and work that list, and I think that's one of the things he intends to do. But right now, he's got a cash machine, and he knows that on a monthly basis, he says, if I don't change anything,
Mm-hmm.
$50,000 a month in revenue,
Wow.
what he's doing, and on upwards. He said that right now one of his clients had $450,000 in 1 month was the record. So he's got some clients that are killing it too, and they're selling high dollar programs and just really focusing on a smaller audience. But he's feeding it with ads through Facebook, and he's starting to explore YouTube as far as a medium for ads and some other social media platforms. So I think it's a really compelling model. He's kind of opposed to information marketing in terms of he thinks information marketing is kind of overplayed. A lot of people buy into information marketing products and then never use it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he feels like if he can get people in that truly want what he's offering and are willing to pay that $10,000 price tag, I think it's something to explore.
Well, I think the price, right? The price that he's charging basically builds in commitment, right? Because if you pay 10 grand, the likelihood that you're not going to follow up on it is pretty slim. You pay $2.99 or $47 for an ebook. That's going to sit on your hard drive until you get a new PC, and then it'll be gone.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
he definitely has the right idea. And I think that, but when it comes to info marketing, I think that the way that info marketing is being sold and marketed might be getting a little tired and played out, but everything moves, everything moves in cycles. So I think from that perspective, what's being done in marketing today will eventually desensitize the audience over time, and the marketers and sellers will have to evolve and do things to attract them and so on and so forth. But I don't think that the attention span of the average consumer is going to increase over time. I think we're going to be fighting a battle of always having a consumer base that's devoid of
Yeah.
attention, decreasing
Oh,
attention spans.
yeah. I mean, it's the world we live in. I had a nephew came and visited, and we did a lot of fun stuff together. But most of the time during the day, he's sitting there with his cell phone like this in front of his face, texting his girlfriend, texting people he's friends with. And when you see that, you're exposed to the way that younger people live, and even people, adults and people that I'm friends with, and myself, I'm guilty of just getting my face
Hold on, dude. I
stuck
got
in
to
the
text.
phone.
I got to text somebody. Hold on.
Yeah, exactly. As if
No,
anybody
no,
wants your text.
I completely understand. I think that, well, like I said, it all plays in. Oh, by the way, did you smack that kid? Smack the phone out of his hand,
I,
crush it,
you
throw it
know,
in the garbage?
of course, I gave him a hard time, but I mean, I totally get it. But my point from that is, it made me realize, man, I need to be thinking in terms of how do I keep that audience engaged? Because that's going to be our consumers in a few years.
Correct.
And depending on where you market now, it already could be your consumer. And so I think it's important we don't ignore that way of doing business. But I think finding a way of kind of working with the ADD mindset that most of us have today, because we're bouncing all over the place, email, Facebook, my
Mm-hmm.
cell phone. It's like finding ways to stay focused. That's why, you and I were talking about the time management program I'm working on, where you really focus on getting 3 core things done every day.
Mm-hmm.
Identifying what are those musts, and then obviously you have other things that are going to have to get done, but you got to get those musts done. And if you can take some progress every day, man, you can fall down every day as long as you're falling forward and still reach the finish line.
Correct. So
Like,
I think the key with what you're saying is that pick 3 things and just get them done,
yeah,
and make them a priority, realizing that you will have distraction. Because I think that saying, well, I'm not going to let things distract me is an abstraction, right? That's not true. Things will always distract you just because of the way that our minds are built. But
absolutely.
if you pick 3 things and you keep them in front of you and say, no matter how many times I get distracted or what happens, I'm going to get these 3 things done. And I think the key to getting those things done is having those things be applicable and manageable within the time that you have allowed yourself to complete them. Because if you give yourself something huge, you're not going to finish it. And you do it one, you're not going to finish it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and next thing you know, I don't know, maybe this doesn't work, whatever. So I think that how you frame and define that goal is going to determine whether or not that goal is going to be successful. You have to make it bite-sized and manageable per day. It's not like I'm going to finish a whole presentation on Monday. You're not going to. You're going to say that to make yourself feel good, but you're not going to get shit done. Let's face it. You're going to do a quarter, maybe. But getting back to what you were saying about the audience, I think there's three components to that. You've got to get their attention, then you've got to retain their attention, and then you've got to actually, in terms of information marketing or coaching, then you actually have to teach them something. And I think that if you separate those three and understand which one you're doing at which time, obviously getting their attention is going to be, is going to determine on a demographic. But in terms of getting them to pay attention, that's going to be a whole different thing, because I think we're going to have a little bit more entertainment in there. It's going to have to be a little more engaging, can't be dry. So, and then I think taking them to a medium, which is really tough to do, because how do you separate them from social media, the Facebook, the Twitter, the YouTube, if you're delivering your information via a digital device, right? So how do you do that? How do you, do you build an app that says, when you launch my app, I'm cutting you off of everything else? Maybe for a digital delivery system, maybe that's an application that would be kind of cool to sell, right?
Well, that's why, we're sitting here on Blab, and I think one of the things that's cool and compelling is we've now got this platform where we can interact with people in a way that we haven't been able to before. I mean, we've relied on an email response or a text message. Now we can actually invite people in and invite them into the conversation. So I think this is possibly a look at the future of how communication takes place online. I think there's more and more going to be a move towards direct interaction, and that opens up the opportunity to get back to a place where we're all engaged and not just buried in a text message or into a device. We actually can interact. And somebody told me once, it's like, well, when they do a Google Hangout, they feel it's as close to an offline connection as you're going to get remotely, because you can see the person's reactions, you can see their hand gestures, you can see when you're turning your nose up at me, which I know you do often when we talk on the phone.
I was just flipping you off, but I did it under the camera so you couldn't see it. I was very disappointed.
Well, that's true.
Well, you said hand gestures. You cannot say hand gestures and expect me to just sit there and not do anything inappropriate.
Is there a chance you could move your camera to your hands and off of your face? Would you be willing to do that for me? Because that would actually be, I think everyone would appreciate that.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. Was there a zero in the middle? I think you were saying marketing 101.
Right. Boss Academy, obviously. Everybody knows that.
I
understand what you're saying concerning the one-on-one interaction, but I think that for coaching and stuff like that, I think it's going to be great if you have, direct clients, direct people that you're coaching one-on-one, or maybe even very select small groups. But I think the challenge will still remain in terms of digital content that you create once, sell over and over. How do you make that truly compelling to that millennial, to that individual who really who's accustomed to watching TV and texting and maybe even playing a game and doing none of these things really well, or paying attention exclusively to one of them, but doing all of them at like 10% capacity. So when you get in front of them with your content, which could be great, how do you bring them into to the point where they say, I'm not going to be doing 4 different things while watching this because I need to get a lot of information from this.
Yeah, I think it comes back to, it's maybe a little mindset shift. We talked about Ruffino, what he's doing, but it's about getting away from just pure information marketing and focusing more on outcomes. Now, granted, most information marketing is based upon, hey, you're going to do this, you're going to have outcomes. But moving more towards the focus is like, this is how we get outcomes. This is how we hold you accountable to it. You're not just going to buy this program from me and walk away. You're going to actually leverage these things and do something with it. And I think that's the opportunity, because that, maybe you can find ways to force the engagement, and that can be done through gaming. There's a woman by the name of Betty Adamu, and she lives in London, but she does marketing research. I've been in the research industry in some capacities since 1990. I've never seen anybody do what she does. She's taken and created video games, and the video games are the market research surveys. So instead of going through just a boring questionnaire online where you go on question by question, it's actually embedded in an interactive video game, and she has multiple games that she's built, and her clients love this. And I asked her, I said, so who is this not a fit for? And she didn't give an answer based off of industry. Now, granted, it's going to be hard to do that with healthcare professionals and things like that. But as long as we're dealing with, even on most B2B surveys and on consumer surveys, there's really not an audience that's not a fit for, as long as you're not alienating somebody because they feel like it's cheesy or it's unprofessional. But what she's doing is she's creating an engaged survey taker. That's been the biggest challenge on most research surveys, is if it's an online self-administered survey, you don't know if they're paying attention or not. I mean, you can run some tests. There's some strategies to see if, okay, are they cheating? Are they skipping questions? But in hers, you can't skip questions because it's part of an interactive process. But it's also fun. And she's finding that people that 70 and 80 years old are as much in love with this as the 20-year-olds.
Well, I think in certain ways, the human mind is predisposed to liking and interacting willfully with with games, basically game theory, which is we can't stop ourselves, which is why playing games is so addictive and so on and so forth. So I think that if you were to put your content into that, providing that the content does fit and it makes sense and everything else, you would have a much better chance at retaining some of their attention. But I think the other problem is, what is that thing beeping, dude?
That's me giving you some props for all your wisdom.
Oh, dude, you just distracted me, son of a... I forgot what I was saying. Maybe what I was saying really is, Paul's right. Do what Paul says. There you go. Done.
That's probably the wisest thing you've said on this whole conversation.
It's the only thing I do when I don't know what to do. I just say, what would Paul do in this situation? Kind of like, what would Jesus do? What would Paul do? And that's really the same thing. But no,
hey, Don, welcome to the show. Don's out there listening too, so we got some great people.
Who's Don? Don from where?
Don Lee.
Hi, Don. What's up? But the gamification, that stuff is both kind of exciting because it opens up options, but it also, it goes in a step in a direction where once the games no longer work, what are you going to do? Because, is the attention span going to be so minute that we're going to have to, are the games going to have to get more and more extreme over the next decade just to keep their attention? And eventually what's going to happen? You're going to have what are you going to have to do? Just club somebody over the head and drag them back to your office and give them a presentation?
Yeah, but I think that, I think there's a chance that any form of marketing is going to get oversaturated. I mean, look, if everyone was on Blab, then, it's hard to get people like Don and anyone else who wants to join in this conversation in here, because their attention is going to be spread to the people that they, that are the big names or whatever. I think there's oversaturation in any form of marketing can be an issue, but I think anything we can do to get people engaged and actually focused on giving real insights and giving real feedback, that's pretty powerful. On the research side, that's been the biggest struggle is, everyone says do marketing research, but when you do marketing research, you don't know what kind of responses you're getting. I mean, it's that person even paying attention when they're doing it, or are they off multitasking? Yeah. Well, here's games the thing. And other forms of things like that, I think can really suck them in, and that works today.
But I think, you mentioned something about marketing research and the reliability of marketing research. I think that there are two types of marketing research. You can do marketing research on participants that are aware of the fact that they're being, quote unquote, researched or evaluated or looked at. And I think that those answers can be truthful, can be not truthful. I have found that if you're interviewing someone or if you're researching a marketing group and they know they're being researched, their answers are going to be, I don't want to use the term less genuine, but they're going to be more contrived, more in line with what they are supposed to be saying versus what they may actually be thinking. What I have found in terms of marketing research that has been tremendously helpful is basically observation of individuals that don't know that they're directly being observed or evaluated, right? Because that's when they give, the responses that they would normally give. They speak in such a way that is very familiar with them. So and I think that given what the internet affords us in terms of forums, social media, Twitter, Facebook, all these other different venues, you can basically sit back and do research on anyone, any group at any time, and you can collect data that was once almost impossible to get, and you can do it for free if you know how. And I think that data produces results that I think outshine and outperform anything you can get from a group. That you would sit there like what do they call those groups? I'm talking
focus
about.
Groups.
Yeah, in terms of a focus group, you're going to get feedback that if you know how to evaluate, you're going to get stuff that's really under the surface and very hidden.
Well, research is up to interpretation. I mean, like I said, I started in this industry in 1990. I worked for Gallup for 10 years. I mean, you can take a focus group and a bad moderator can get answers out, produce a report that's based off of some bias and things like that. But there's things that are done to try and limit some of that. On the quantitative side, the numbers tend to prove themselves, if with a margin of error in some capacity with a well-designed instrument. Big data, I think, is a really compelling topic, but nobody's really figured out how to truly make big data work the way that I think it has the potential to, in terms of all this information that's out there on Twitter and Facebook, mining and extracting it. There's some companies out there that are really playing with that, and they're doing some side-by-side comparisons, doing quantitative surveys and then taking big data and trying to make some comparisons. And there are often a lot of parallels, but there's still some disconnects. And so I think it's figuring out how to bridge those gaps. I think that's the future of mining information, is obviously having that. But I think we're a ways away from having it figured out.
I think so. And I think there's two ways to look at that, because obviously the more information you have up front about your demographic, the better off you're going to be. But it's impossible to know everything, and it's impossible to structure everything where research is required, right?
You froze up there for a second, Matt.
Oh, am I back?
You're back, but you're in slow motion. I like it.
Am I back? Come on. All right.
You're back.
So, in terms of research and data, there's only so much you can do up front. But if you do nothing up front, then you really are genuinely screwed, because you're basically taking a dart and just throwing it, right? And from that perspective, it's a hit or miss thing. And if you've got unlimited time and money and you're kind of bored, and you can play that game all day, and eventually you're going to hit something. It may take you a while, and it may be one of your first, endeavors or pursuits. But I think that research is ultimately the most responsible thing you could do up front. But there's only so much you can collect, and there's so much you can do. I think the flip side of that is that once you get these individuals engaged, making sure that you address their behaviors and what they do once they're in your funnel, once they sign up to your webinar, once they watch your content, their behavior, their individual behavior has to determine and quantify what your next reaction or action will be toward them. If you put those two together, you're going to have a pretty powerful model, right?
Yeah. Oh, I think that's totally true. And, I think anything we can do to really figure out why people are buying from us, why they're not buying from us, how we can better engage them and better earn their trust. I mean, I think that's all valuable for everything we do. I mean, if you're marketing online, some people don't take the time and energy to do it. They just figure it's like, okay, well, I've got an unlimited stream of leads available, because I can pay for more advertising. Let's do that. Well, why don't we figure out how to capitalize and maximize upon that, and be as efficient as possible?
Oh, absolutely. But again, I think that in this situation, you're looking at individuals who, they don't do a whole lot of research, and they say, there's always more people out there for me to get, just like you said. But in terms of long-term, in terms of longevity in your business, that is probably the best way to guarantee non-longevity. Just
Yeah,
because
exactly.
just because
Exactly.
eventually you're going to use and abuse a certain list, a certain audience, and they're going to get tired of your stuff, and they're going to start disregarding your stuff, and you're going to be a non-entity. I think that staking out mental real estate in your demographic is really, really what's required. I mean, the idea that we have to go out there and convince people to buy is, I see a lot of that online, offline, everywhere. The concept is like, we have to convince these individuals to buy. No, you don't. We're a consumer culture. We have been, generations and generations have been, for lack of a better term, bred to purchase. We know we're going to be buying stuff. I know I'm going to buy a car and a phone and a house and this or that in the future. Excuse me, in the future. And so will you. You will buy certain things, and no
Right.
one will have to convince you to buy them. Now, which one you're going to buy, that is where the sales and marketing comes in. But the fact that we're going to be buying stuff, I mean, we're going to be doing it. I'm going to do it. You're going to do it. Everyone in America is going to do it. If they stopped, well, obviously we would have no commerce, and our whole economy would pretty much flop. So, and
Yeah,
I
but
think,
I think you bring up a really good point. I mean, Jeffrey Gitomer always talks about people hate to be sold, but they love to buy, and I think that's the difference there. It's like, yes, I'm going to be buying some of these things, and yes, I'm going to be a consumer for life. But when I walk into a store, or if somebody interacts with me online and I feel like they're selling me, even if I walk in with the best intentions with my credit card in hand to buy something, I might go to a different store because I don't like that approach. So finding ways to engage people that doesn't turn them off and alienate them, I think, is the big challenge. And so many marketers, online and offline, are overly aggressive because they're afraid to focus on the relationship and focus more on the sale. And I'll give a great example. I had a gentleman on my show, Boss Academy Radio, who he had went in to buy a car, and he has money's not an issue for him. He can buy whatever car he wants, but he walks into the dealership and he says, okay, here's the car I want. I want it in leather. I want this, that, all these features, and I want it in blue. And the guy goes, great. We've got one on the lot, everything you want, except it's red. He goes, let's write that up. And he's like, no, I want to find this car in blue. And he kept going back and forth with this guy. And eventually he got really frustrated because everything he did was tell this guy, it's like, this sale is yours if you just give me what I'm looking for. And the guy didn't have that car in inventory. Instead of going and talking to his manager and trying to find a blue one, he was going to die on the sword and say, I want you to buy this one on the lot because I want the sale now.
mm-hmm.
He ended up walking away and going somewhere else and buying the car.
Well,
So
yeah, basically, I think what a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, whether you've been in business for 20 years or 30 years, you have to come to terms with the reality that marketing is theater, and people want a certain amount of theater when they're buying stuff, but they don't want you to rip the stage out of the way and have you see what's behind there, have you see the lot. They want a certain amount of theater. They don't want too much of it because then they're going to get irritated. But if you basically rip the facade away and just basically hardcore try to sell them, you're really, really going to turn them off. They're used to and accustomed to a certain amount of handling, for lack of a better term.
Well, especially today with all the sophisticated research you can do without a lot of knowledge. I mean, you can go on Google and find answers to almost anything. Sometimes it's the questions we should be asking that are the issue, but finding information and finding insights is not, it's unlimited. You can get it anywhere. So you're 100% right. And I think buyers out there get very turned off when they feel like they're getting a hard sales pitch.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just because if that was a normal cultural thing in our society, then people would be accustomed to it and they would go in there, do the hard sell, do the hard resist, and so on and so forth. But we're used to a certain amount of, foreplay, for lack of a better term, right? It's just, you don't just walk into a bar and walk up to some, call it prospect, and just blab out exactly what you want to do. You play the game, you buy a drink, you go back and forth. And I think it's the same dance that occurs with customers. If you go in there just balls out, going crazy, you're going to push away 99.9% of those individuals.
Absolutely.
But I think that, again, let's use the bar analogy, right? You walk into a bar, let's say your target, male, female, whatever, let's say you know a certain amount of things about this individual. The likelihood of you getting what you want out of that transaction or that potential relationship or whatever is highly likely, providing that you take that information and you know how to structure it into the theater that is, mating or basic. I know I was going to go there, but anyway, the point being is that
I just love the fact you called it mating.
Well, no, I'm trying to think of a better term, but anyway, but the point is, you have a customer, they want something, you have to play a certain amount of theater to basically to move the game along. And if you don't do it, you're going to be alienated by them. And if you do it too much and you make it too fluffy and too over the top, they won't like it either. So you've got to find that basically sweet spot of what do I do and when do I do it. And I think that researching them and getting information on them, because, depending on what you're saying, what you're selling, could be weight loss, it could be business. But in those situations, you're filling a gap that they have. And that gap is really, something that's truly, truly missing in their life. But that gap is not really what's driving the purchase decision. That gap is the symptom, right? I don't look good. I'm not happy with my income, whatever. But it's how they will feel after they achieve what they want with your product or your service. That's what's really in the back of their mind. So if you sell to that goal and create this as a vehicle to get there, I think that you're going to be able to connect with them.
Well, that's what I said earlier, and I think this is a great stopping point. We said we'd do this for 20 minutes. We wanted to try out Blab, and you and I both know how to Blab, but I think that a great stopping point is going back to what I said earlier. It's focusing on the outcomes. Mm-hmm. And if that's where your message takes them, and that's, that the outcome should be that they walk away a happy customer because they're looking for this, or this, and that's what you're providing them, then everyone walks away happy. Matt,
indeed,
it's been fun.
Absolutely. So, let's do it again.
Yeah, thanks all for joining in. We'll be back on, and we're going to do this weekly. We're going to just have a little discussion on some marketing and sales topics. Matt runs Perception Management. I'm the host of Boss Academy Radio. You can check me out at bossacademy.com. So thanks, everyone, for listening in.
Thank you.